we were not ruthless enough last time, so this time we're gonna fix that. So I filmed an unhaul earlier this year, and I want to say it was about 6 months ago. So this is our second unhaul for the year of 2021. I feel like the first time I was not as thorough as I needed to be. I was not as ruthless as I needed to be, and I gave some books way more chances than they should have had. Also, I did not pay attention to really what I had on my shelf, and now I have. So we are going to do a thorough unhaul because I am tired of having books on my shelves that don't bring me serotonin when I look at it. And that's the goal today, that everything on this shelf will bring me some type of good feeling when I look over at my bookcases and my eyes land on a book. I want either to have really good memories with that book or really great expectations for that book, excitement for that book, and anything that doesn't give me that feeling when I look at it, it has to go. Okay, so I have a really packed cart over here, and I feel like this is going to end up being a massive unhaul. So yeah, but it's okay because it's the end of the year and we're unhauling a bunch of things massively so that 2022 can bring us really good reading vibes. And I have cleared a lot of room off my shelves for the books that are getting ready to come in that I plan to carry me into the year of 2022, and these are the books that we're going to use to make space. And I do want to mention that a lot of these books are not books that I just didn't like or don't want to read or have no interest. Like, it's nothing negative about these books that I'm going to mention unless I actually say something negative about them. It's just the goal is to feel happiness or emotions when I look at them. And so a lot of the books that are on this shelf probably you have read and you have loved, but when I look at them I feel nothing. So there's that. So first up is going to be Kingdom of Souls. I honestly bought this book because I felt like pressure to read it. Not peer pressure in a sense, but I just kept seeing this book all over BookTube and all over Instagram, and I really had no interest in reading it, but it just kept popping up on my timeline. And so when I seen that it was on sale at the bookstore that I was shopping at, I was just like, okay, let me go ahead and read this book. But it's not a book that I ever really set out to read. It's not a book that I wanted to read. It was just like, I keep seeing it everywhere and I wanted to know what the hype was about. But even after purchasing this book, it's been on my shelf for almost a year, and I have not looked at it, thought about it, even attempted to pick it up since I purchased it. And so I'm just admitting to myself that I really didn't want to read this book. And I'm going to be mindful about that the next time that I get to seeing books everywhere, because buying books is such a compulsive thing to do, especially when you're seeing books repeatedly and you do YouTube or Instagram or Twitter or any platform where you review books. At some point you're going to want to read a book simply because you keep seeing it or the hype that you hear around it. And unfortunately this was a result of that. If you have read this book and you loved it, that is great. It's not a book that I would have read if I was not in the book community, and even being in the book community, still have not read it. Next up, I am going to be unhauling The Obelisk Gate. It's actually going to be a lot of books on this pile that you guys see like that. I shop secondhand bookstores a lot. I shop from thrift books a lot. It is literally my favorite app. And so when I first started reading the Broken Earth trilogy, I ordered all of the books from thrift books for super cheap, and I didn't mind that I got super old and beat up copies because I was just excited to get the book for $3 or $4. I was like, cool, whatever. But after reading these books, I fell in love with N.K. Jemisin. I have since read everything she has written, and I was looking at my shelves and just realizing that, like, I have these beat up copies, especially of The Obelisk Gate, and it actually ended up being an ex-library copy, which was a mistake. So they ended up giving me back my money because I purchased because when I went to purchase it, it didn't mention that it was ex-library, but when I got it in the mail, it was. So I don't know why I never upgraded my copy, but this is definitely a book that I loved. It is definitely a book that I would reread. The entire series is something that I would reread multiple times, and I'm very comfortable saying that I want to upgrade my copies. I wish that N.K. Jemisin's books came in hardback because this is the series that made me fall in love with her. And it's not my favorite. My favorite is actually the 100,000 Kingdoms series, but this is definitely a close second. And I'm excited to upgrade my copies because it's really time to upgrade my books. Sticking with N.K. Jemisin, I'm going to be unhauling The City We Became. Now, N.K. Jemisin is a queen. If you have been following my channel for a long time, you know that I absolutely love her. This is the only book that she has written that I did not like. I admired and appreciated a lot of the things that she was doing in this book. It is very different from the other books that she has written, which has been high adult fantasy with really great worlds, but this is an urban fantasy. And for me, it just felt like there was this dichotomy between her writing level and her ability to build these great imagery and world building, and then shoving it into New York City. And there was nothing wrong with New York City. I did see and understand and appreciate, like I said, the things that happened in this book, but it just, I was not a fan of it. I'm also learning that I may not be a fan of urban fantasy altogether, because so far the only urban fantasy book that I've been able to read that I actually like has been Jade City. So I will definitely be more mindful when I see a book that is fantasy but set in urban, because if N.K. Jemisin, who is someone that I absolutely love, wasn't able to do it for me, I'm going in with caution with all other authors except Fonda Lee, because Jade City is that girl. Another author that I have read a lot of books from and I actually like would be Sarah J Maas. I have read ACOTAR and I enjoyed it. Crescent City is my favorite book that she has ever written, and I have tried to get into Throne of Glass, and I mean truly tried, but it's just not something that I liked. I just did not like it, and I wanted to, and I know that the books get better as the series goes on, and I think I made it to book 2 or 3, but it was just so freaking boring that I was just like, no, not even for Sarah J Maas, which is an author that I actually really like, will I suffer through. I think there's like 10 books or 8 books in this series, and it was just like, no. Still putting out books in the ACOTAR series. Silver Flames just came out this year. House of Sky and Breath is coming out at the top of next year, and for me it was just, I will be able to read more books by her that I feel like I would enjoy than having to suffer through her backlist. And I have thought about rereading the series and like trying to get back into it so many times, but at this point I look at it and I just feel nothing. It's not for me. I wanted to be one of those people that loved all the things that Sarah J Maas has written, but this just wasn't it. I'm just gonna look forward and read everything that she puts out now, and we're letting the past live in the past. The next book that I am unhauling is going to be When No One Is Watching. I read this book last year. I received an ARC for it. I actually really liked the book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was a really enjoyable read for me, but I don't see myself rereading it. It's hard to reread thrillers when you know what is going to happen, and so I know for a fact that I won't be rereading this book. It was just like a one-time enjoyment, but I do have some friends in mind that I know would really enjoy it. Since it is an ARC, I do want to give it away to someone who I feel like will enjoy it as much as I did the first time. It really sucks when you can't get the same feeling for a book the second time around, but this is just one of them. Next up is going to be Velvet Was the Night. This is the first book that I've read by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, and I enjoyed the writing, but I am not a noir girl. And so I know that this is not the book that I probably should have started with her writing, but it was so simple and like easy to read. It's a very short book, and I do want to read more books from her. It's just the noir wasn't doing it for me, and I don't think I gave this book 4 or 5 stars. I think I gave it a 3. I want to see what else she has to offer, but there's no point in this taking up room on my shelf because I'm not going to reread it. The next book that I'm going to be getting rid of is going to be Beach Read. I have read 2 books by Emily Henry, and I did enjoy People We Meet on Vacation. I love that book. If I can find it in hardback, it's going to be up. But unfortunately, I did not enjoy Beach Read. I did not like January. I found her extremely annoying. I know that I won't reread this book, and I won't recommend it to someone because I'm not going to recommend an annoying ass character for someone else to read. So I know that other people love Emily Henry, other people really enjoyed Beach Read, and so I'm going to be getting rid of this one so someone else can see January for all the glory that she supposedly has, because it went over my head. The next books that I'm going to be getting rid of is going to be Get a Life and Take a Hint. I read Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I did not like it. I started Take a Hint, Danny Brown, and I have DNF'd this book 3 times. I unfortunately am just not a fan of these types of romance books. And honestly, now that I've done the Finding New Favorites on my channel series, and if you guys haven't seen those videos, make sure you click the link to go check them out, because I went through several different genres that I don't normally read and tried to find my taste and tried to find new favorites. And so when I did the Finding New Favorites episode for romance, I learned so much about my taste. And if I had known my taste before, I know that I would have never read these books. Again, these are just romance books that I seen all over the freaking internet, and everybody was raving about them and talking about them, and I was just like, okay, I'm not really a romance reader, but maybe these books would do it. No. So glad that I did that journey. I'm so glad that you guys followed me on that journey. It's been so fun reading your comments and just seeing what you guys think that I'm going to like versus what I end up liking, and then finding people who understand me, because at first I felt very ostracized because I did not enjoy any of the super popular books that people talk about in the romance community. But when I did find books that I did enjoy, and just seeing other people who enjoyed them too, who have similar romance tastes to me, that was so fun. I know that I would not have ever had any interest in reading these because it is just not to my taste, and I know for a fact I won't be rereading Get a Life. I'm pretty certain 99.987 that I won't be finishing Take a Hint, and I know I won't be reading what is it, Act Your Age? No, they're not for me. Be getting rid of is going to be Six of Crows and Cricket Kingdom. I was supposed to do an unhaul of these earlier this year for my first unhaul when I got these in hardbacks, and I love this series so freaking much that I was not willing to part with my paperbacks. I was determined to have them in paperback and hardback, but honestly, the hardback versions of this book is enough for me and my collection and what I want, and I don't need to have these in paperback. I'm going to be unhauling A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I enjoyed The Hunger Games when I was younger. I was excited, even though I enjoyed The Hunger Games when I was younger. I was not excited about having a prequel that followed President Snow. I definitely was not looking forward to this book. I don't like President Snow, but I was willing to read the book to just give it a chance, and it was everything that I expected it to be, and it did not make me glad that I ended up purchasing it. I have not talked about it with anyone. It was a book that I read, and I honestly feel a little bit of dislike when I see it on my shelf, because I'm just like, ugh, I definitely should have left that at the store. Then we have The Raven Tower. This has been sitting on my shelf for an entire year and a half, and I am nowhere near close to reading it. And I've just decided that even if I was to ever read this, it would probably more than likely be on audio. So there's no reason for me to have a hard copy of this book. I don't anticipate that I'm going to love it. At best, I feel like it's going to be a 3 stars. So getting rid of this. I ordered The Black Witch from Thrift Books, and this doesn't happen often, but there's been 3 times that I've ordered from Thrift Books and they have sent me the wrong thing. And so when I tried to order The Black Witch off Thrift Books, they sent me an ARC instead of what I actually was supposed to receive. And so when I reached out to them to say, hey, I received an ARC and it wasn't supposed to be, they ended up sending me the hardcover version of this book, and so I ended up having 2. Another book that I want to get rid of is also an ARC, and that is going to be The Passing Playbook. It came out this year in June, and I unfortunately was not able to read it before the release date came out. Now that I've read romance books, I'm not entirely sure that I'm going to enjoy this one, and I would be more than happy to give it to someone who I feel like would. The next book that I'm going to be unhauling is going to be On the Come Up. I admire and appreciate everything that Angie Thomas is doing and this contemporary world that she has built up around the Black community, and releasing multiple books that get to follow characters that overlap with her series. But I've not kept up with the books that are coming out. I have not read all of the books that exist between her characters, between The Hate You Give and Concrete Rose, and I don't feel like it's something that I personally would keep up with. I wanted to keep this book because I really liked the addition of it, but I honestly don't feel like I'm going to read it anytime soon, and when I look at it, I feel very indifferent, and the goal here is to be brutal, to be harsh, and this unfortunately did not make the cut. Next is going to be Blood of the Chosen, which is book 2 to Django Wexler's, I don't know what this series is called, Burning Blade and Silver Eye. The first book is going to be Ashes of the Sun, which I read in a reading blog. You can click the link to go check out my thoughts in depth on that. But in short, I ended up DNF the book about 200 pages in. I was simply not enjoying it, and I started to feel like reading the book was a chore, and I was wanting to switch to audio, but this year I've been very stingy with my audio credits. It's weird because in 2020 I listened to a great amount of audiobooks, but this year I think I was just exhausted with audiobooks, and I went through an audiobook slump, if that makes any sense. Because last year when I went through a slump, I used audiobooks to get me out, and I think my brain was just like, yeah, I am tired of audiobooks. And anytime I was trying to listen to something on audio for a majority of this year, I ended up having to like restart the book. I was missing information, I wasn't paying attention, it was just mentally gruesome. And so this year I did not listen to nearly as many audiobooks as I did last year, and I didn't switch to audio for Ashes of the Sun. I just was like, yeah, I'm DNFing. And so I have book 2, and I know that I'm not going to read it because I did not finish book 1. Then we have A Declaration of the Rights of Magic. I wanted to read this book because I read The Last Magician, which I freaking loved. I've read all the books, but those are YA. And so this gave me the same vibes as The Last Magician, but it's an adult version. And when I seen it, I was like, okay, I definitely want to read it. But it took me a while to get around to picking it up. And then I went to Portland, and I went to this really big bookstore called Powell's, and they had this for $8. And I was just like, yes. And right after that, book 2 to this came out, which is A Radical Act of Free Magic. This is book 2 to this book. And when this book was released, Red Hook ended up sending me the finished copy of this book as well as book 1. And I ended up having 2 editions of this one. I'm so grateful to receive books from publishers. Now that I have a free copy and a copy of book 2, I want to get rid of this one and get it in the hands of someone else. Next up is Everything by Nicola Yoon. I know that people absolutely love this book, and this is another bromance book that I purchased and got my hands on before I started the journey of actually discovering my taste in romance. And I feel like I may like this book, but I don't think that it's going to be a favorite. I don't think that I'm going to love it. And it's also another book that I feel like I would listen to on audio when I'm cleaning my house or trying to do something. It's a book that I would probably listen to. I'm not really excited about it, and also it's another book that I don't feel anything when I look at. Sorry if you're watching this and you are a diehard fan of Everything. I'm not saying that I won't read it. It's just not high on my radar, and I don't think that even if I read it, I would want to own a physical copy. Then we have The Taking of Jake Livingston, another book that ended up coming through to me through my library on Libby, and I listened to on audio because it was so short, and it's not a book that I want to keep a physical copy of. So these are going to be getting upgraded. I read Scythe earlier this year. It was the first books that I read by Neil Shusterman, and I have read so many more since. I am a fan of his writing and the things that he does with his dystopias, and I have just, every time I look at these on my shelf, I have such good memories of my reading experience, because at the time that I read these, I was in a really bad slump, and I had not had a 5-star read in a while, and I just remember reading Scythe and like mind blown, had to get to Barnes & Nobles, had to buy book 2, and I knew then that I wanted to get these in hardbacks because I knew they were going to be a series that I freaking loved, but I was so desperate to get my hands on the book to read it that I did not want to wait for the hardcovers to come in if I was to order them, and Barnes & Nobles only sold the paperback versions, and I just had to settle for them. Now that I'm done, every time I look at them on my shelves, I'm a little disappointed that I don't have them in hardcovers. And every time I watch Stephanie's channel from Stephanie Book First, she has hardcovers in the corner of her video, and I just stare in jealousy, and I'm tired of it. So we're gonna upgrade these. Even though I've enjoyed several of the books I've read by Neil Shusterman, including the Unrind series, Dry, and the Scythe series, I got an advanced copy of Roxy that I have read, and it is not my favorite from him. I don't see myself rereading it at all. I know for a fact that I won't reread these books. And of all the books that I've read by Neil Schusterman that I would actually recommend. This would not be one of them. I would talk about Unwind, Dry, or Scythe before I even thought to mention this, and so there's no reason for me to hold on to it. Then we have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I read this book expecting to really love it, but honestly, The Starless Sea cannot be matched for me. That book just makes my heart flutter and jump, and it brings me so much freaking joy just thinking about The Starless Sea. But I recently got a custom edition of it, and I haven't shown it on my channel yet. I will link the Instagram of the person who ended up doing the design for me. I reached out to them and told them that I wanted the sword and the key and the bee, and that I wanted it to be blue and faded. Like, I was very detailed about what I wanted, and they made my vision come to life. And I just, if my house was on fire, I'm running out with this freaking book. With that being said, I do not have the same sentiments for The Night Circus. I see why a lot of people who love The Night Circus, diehard fans of The Night Circus, don't actually like The Starless Sea and vice versa. And I am on the side of the fence that is The Starless Sea. That is just an immaculate piece of work. I know for a fact that if I was going to tell anyone to read any books from Erin, it would be The Starless Sea, and this was a fun experience. It's definitely a good book. I suggest that you try it, and if you're into really fantastical worlds, I feel like between The Night Circus and The Starless Sea, you will find what you're looking for in Erin's writing. I'm excited for whatever other books this author puts out. I just know that The Night Circus wasn't for me, but I will keep getting copies of The Starless Sea. Next is Priory of the Orange Tree. I read this book in 2020, in the summer of 2020, and I enjoyed it when I read it. I just know that I would never reread this book, and I don't really feel anything when I look at it. I remembered the experience, but it just wasn't a really emotionally attached experience, and I like to have emotional connections and memories of nostalgia when I look at the books on my shelves, and this just does not do that. I am getting ready to start the Bone season, and so maybe that will be the series that I really grab onto. I'm gonna keep trying books by Samantha Shannon until I get the one that really grips me and like I gravitate towards. I'm gonna keep trying, but Priory was not it. I did enjoy it though, so if you were thinking about reading it and you can make it through this tome, I suggest that you give it a try. I have a copy of We Hunt the Flame. This is another one that I got secondhand. I know that you can't freaking tell because it's such a good condition when I was in Portland, but as a gift for graduation, someone in my family ended up gifting me the hardcovers of the first book and the sequel to the duology, and I much rather love the hardcover versions of this series, so I plan to read them. I'm expecting to love them from everything that I've heard about them, and I know that I won't need the paperback version when I have these. I mean, they're so beautiful. Then we have The Electric Kingdom. It's just a book that I don't want to own a physical copy of, and there's that. Believe it or not, guys, we still have quite a few more books to go through. I know this video is going to be super long, and for that, I apologize. Next, I'm going to be unhauling Hinch. I read this book. It was kind of underwhelming. I ended up giving it a 2 out of 5. I did a whole review. You can click the link on that one in the cards here. And the synopsis of the book and the description of the book sold it in a way that the actual book did not. And I don't need to own a physical copy of this book because I would not reread it and I would not tell anyone to read it. So there's that. Honestly, like, it's a book that I don't recommend. If you are thinking about buying it, thinking about reading it, I don't know anyone who would really love it unless you read Renegades, but honestly, Renegades by Marissa Meyer was more entertaining. It is time to let these books go. They bring me so many memories, and I just know that I know for a fact that I would not reread them, and I know for a fact that if I was to reread them now, I would not like it. Juliet would really get on my freaking nerves. I'm going to be getting rid of the Shatter Me series. It was a fun time when I read it. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't really a fan of Juliet, but I read these books as they came out, and just the experience of like waiting for them and the novellas and being excited about the releases and there being so many books and having the what was supposed to be the wrap up. Now there's another novella out that comes after we leave Juliet and Warner and Imagine Me, and I know that I won't be reading that novella. This series is over for me. These I feel like I would have read one day, but not anytime soon, and I'm being ruthless in my unhaul, clearing up space for sure, so these have to go. That is going to be the Diabolic series. If you're thinking about reading this, I do recommend it. I do think that is a very fun YA sci-fi. When I started reading the Diabolic, I was actually enjoying it, but I ended up stopping for some reason, and me pausing in the middle of the book became like a DNF along the way, and I just know that I won't be reading these anytime soon. They will really just keep sitting on my shelves, and so if I ever decide to read them, I would try them on audio. I can't believe that I did not hold up all the Shadow Me books. That's how you know my brain isn't here. So yeah, these are going to. So this is another series that I purchased on Thrift Books that I freaking love, that are getting upgraded. It was announced today actually that I'm filming this, that is getting ready to become a TV series, and I could not be more proud of this author. That is going to be Marie Lu's Legend series. First, I do want to mention that I really hope that they adapt Warcross. Legend is a big thing, and I'm super excited for it to become a show. I cannot wait, but I really hope that they decide to adapt Warcross and Wildcard, because that would just be amazing. As you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Marie Lu. I have read quite a few books by her. The only series that I have not read is going to be The Young Elites, but I do own a copy of that book, and all of the books that I own by Marie Lu are in hardbacks. After purchasing these on Thrift Books and reading them and falling in love with them, I just knew that I could trust Marie Lu to purchase hardbacks in the future, and I honestly am just shocked that I forgot to upgrade these books. They're in really good condition, and it brings me so much joy to think about someone getting their hands on these and just falling in love with Yoon and Day and Marie Lu's writing. And so yeah, these got upgraded to hardbacks. They're actually on their way to me. They should be here tomorrow. If you think that you may want to read the Legend series in anticipation for the show, highly recommend it. Even if something happens and the show doesn't end up coming out, because you know sometimes we don't get information, this was the dystopia for me, and after dealing with the pandemic, this is the perfect time to read these books. I feel like I've been talking for a long time. This is the last one. Oh, thank goodness. The last book that we're going to be unhauling is going to be Instructions for Dancing. This is a book that I did read. It came out this year. I ended up giving it a 2 out of 5. I love sad stories in anything, especially sad stories in my romance, and so I did not dislike this book. It's just I was not really enthralled with Nicola Yoon's writing, and that's what makes me pretty certain that I won't really love everything, because even with it having sad, sappy things in it, it wasn't gripping me the way that I anticipated it. We have this pile right here, this huge pile right here, there's a book up here that you guys can't see, but this huge pile right here, and then we have these right here. If you've made it to the end of this video, please leave me a sun emoji to represent new beginnings, which is what we're gonna have when we get rid of all these books. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. Yeah. Just put it on in there.